Happy Tuesday, everybody. In words we've been waiting to say for quite some time, it is officially game week. South
Game
Carolina
week, baby.
getting ready to take on North Carolina up in Charlotte on Saturday in prime time on ABC. It's going to be the game of the day. No question about it. A lot of great games actually this weekend, but as far as Saturday goes, that will certainly be the biggest of them all. He's Intern Joe. I'm Mike. You appreciate you guys tuning in tonight.
Always.
Joe, we've been talking about this season, going back to last year, even before I'd say the Gator Bowl, because once the regular season ends, even though there's a bowl game still left to be played, and that game will be thrown on from a record standpoint to that previous year, you start to look ahead, though. You start to look ahead to what is coming up on the horizon. And for the South Carolina team, from a positional standpoint, there were a lot of unknowns. There's still some unknowns as we head into this week one game, and we'll discuss that.
Yeah.
However, the way they were able to flip the roster, whether you look at a position like tight end or you look at a position even like the offensive line, and again, there's some unknowns in some of these positions, offensive line being one of them, but they were able to bring in some talented pieces. That starts, of course, with Nick Gargiulo. This South Carolina team, and this was the story for me today from the press conference, there's so many unknowns. Shane Beamer's aware of it. The players are aware of it. Offensive coordinator, right? New play calling. There's so many unknowns. For you, Joe, as we head into this week one matchup, it could be a concern. It could be something that just grabs your attention. What's the most intriguing unknown about this team for you against North Carolina?
Yeah. At least for me, the most intriguing unknown is probably the running back room. Obviously, we know it's going to be DK Joyner and Juju McDowell, the two guys that are going to shoulder most of the load out of the backfield. But I'm interested to see how much the running backs really get used. Because obviously it's been a big question going into the season. It's a fresh offense with Dowell, so we don't really know what it looks like and how much this offense kind of depends on the running backs. So I don't know. I think it's going to be really interesting to see. Obviously, like I said, I think DK's the guy going forward at running back, and until he can't do it or isn't producing as well as they want him to or think he can, I think he's the guy. Offensive line, obviously, I think that's another position of not necessarily concern, but an area of intrigue for sure. If you're looking at the South Carolina team, a lot of new faces. Last year, you graduated a lot of guys that were able to step up when they were young and not really leave the position. So I think the offensive line, obviously, you got Gargiulo, very, I guess, deep in terms of different guys that you could see in there. Obviously, there's a couple oars at the tackle spot that's worth looking at. Sidney Fuger, Jackson Hughes, Casey Henry, Tyshawn Wanamaker, the two names that are, or the four guys that are competing for these tackle spots. Obviously something to watch. I don't think we should be surprised in Gargiulo starting over Marquis Anderson, nor with Ja'Kai Moore starting over Trey Jones or Vershawn Lee over Grayson Maines. So the tackle spots I'm looking at, but other than that, I think, running back wise, they're unproven, and the rest of the offensive line just unproven. DK has the crazy thing about DK Joyner, Mike, is like he's proved himself on pretty much every area of the field but running back, and people are still counting him out. So I think that's going to be a really interesting storyline to see, is like how much is DK Joyner just going to out athlete everyone at running back and just show that he's a really good athlete, and how much that's going to play into him playing the position and everything like that. So obviously the two big ones to me are running back and offensive line, and they're obviously being talked about by everybody, not just myself, as just kind of areas to watch for South Carolina.
I think the ones you said, no question about it. I think the obvious one would be, what's this offense look like, right? And shout out to Colin Taylor trying to crack at least the best he could. Yeah. Asking these guys over and over and over for the last couple of weeks, but especially today, trying to find out, what does this offense look like? I'll talk to you in a little bit about what I think this offense will look like. But I think with that being put to the side, because again, I think that goes without saying. I think just big picture for me, something that's intriguing is how do these younger players step up? This is such a young team. This is such a young team. It gets overlooked so much because when you have your starting quarterback come back and a guy that obviously has a lot of experience in Spencer Rattler, who I want to talk a lot about tonight, you also have Juice Wells coming back. You have experience. You have star power. But you also have a lot of young, unproven players on this team. And when I say unproven, and I'll use Stone Blanton for example, you just haven't seen enough tape. You haven't seen enough tape to know truly what you're going to get. And a guy like Blanton, who, as you see on the two deep, from a linebacker standpoint, at least on paper, he's expected to start. He's expected to start. Now, I do think South Carolina, we've talked about from a linebacker standpoint, and Colin Taylor has mentioned this. He's been on the beat for just as long, if not maybe an extra year as long since I've been here. I've been covering the Gamecocks since 2016. There were some talented linebacking cores that I covered during the Will Muschamp era. This one is right up there. This one is certainly right up there. The difference, though, is just you don't know yet what you're going to get from Blanton from a consistency standpoint. You don't know what you're going to get from Pup Howard, even though he's built like a freaking senior in the SEC, for crying out loud. Even though he's been on campus and practices with this team dating back to last year's Gator Bowl. I say all that not to be a wet blanket in the room, but to point out just how realistic this season could go one or two ways. I mean, this could be a very, very good season, and I would not be shocked. I haven't put my record out there yet as far as what I expect South Carolina to finish this season, in the regular season at least. But if you told me that USC went, 8 wins, 9 wins, even maybe 10 wins, I think 10 wins might be a little far-fetched right now. But if you told me that, I wouldn't be shocked. But I could also believe you if you said, okay, they're going to have 7 wins, 6 wins. They might not even be bowl eligible. And the reason why I say that is just because the schedule is as difficult as it is, on top of the fact that you do have a lot of young players. And until we know what you're going to get out of them on a week-to-week basis, I think that is why there is a lot of skepticism from a national standpoint about this team, on top of the fact of what we've talked about for months, Joe, which is you have this stigma when you're South Carolina that anytime you take a step forward, you take 2 steps back. And some of that has nothing to do with Beamer. Some of that has nothing to do with the players that are on this roster, just from a historical standpoint. So I say that not to be someone that feels like, okay, South Carolina is going to come out and have only 6 wins or whatever. No, I really do believe that they can make a push. And again, I haven't put my record out there quite yet, but 7, 8, 9 wins because they do have the talent. So what we see week 1, I mean, shoot, you go back to last year, DQ Smith, especially in special teams, Nick Eamon-Worry. We saw young players, especially those true freshmen, step up. How does the young talent to you make you feel? Because that is the big thing heading into this game.
I mean, it's got to make you feel good. Shane was talking about it today. Obviously, I think playing or having so many freshmen on the 2 deep, he mentioned it's not necessarily concerning, but does worry you a little bit, that just because those guys are unproven and they're, freshmen, for God's sake. So, obviously, to a fan, it should excite you that the guys that Shane is recruiting are good enough to make an impact of this early on. I think, seeing a guy like Pup Howard, true freshman, and Nick Eamon-Worry the same, be good enough to play as well as they have. Or, Nick Eamon-Worry play as well as he did last year. And then, Pup Howard putting himself in a very good position to do the same. So I think it's really, really, really interesting to see this many freshmen on the 2 deep. Not looking into it too much, obviously, but I think it's good for the program too, especially guys coming in. Recruiting-wise, it's a good sell. It's easy to say, hey, look, this is the opportunity that you can have here. If you come in, you put in the work, you're going to have an opportunity to play. And obviously that depends on certain positions and whatnot. But I definitely think it's a good thing having this many freshmen on the 2 deep. Means they're gonna play. Shane's, made that pretty vocal today. He's like, everyone on the 2 deep will play, and then obviously some guys that aren't on it necessarily too. But I think it's a good thing, Mike. And then obviously getting into, I guess, kind of the record talk and all that. I mean, you can go as high as 9 wins if you want in terms of a ceiling, but I haven't put my record prediction out there. But I think this is the last time you guys will see me until Saturday. So
what you got, Intern Joe? What you got?
I'll throw it out here now. I think realistically, I see South Carolina going 7-5.
All right, I'm writing it down on our Bojangle notepad right here.
All right,
Intern Joe's pick.
7-5 or 8-4. I think it's between those two.
Oh, come on. You got to pick one.
All right, then I'll go 8-4. I think 8-4 it's on the higher side for me, but I think it's not out of the question.
Okay.
And, I mean, to be completely honest with you, Mike, I could see this team winning 9 games. I could see this team winning 4 games. I mean, it's that high of a ceiling and that low of a floor for this team. Now, do I think they'll have 4 wins?
We got Intern Joe down on paper
and
here.
Down. And then, I mean, obviously, like with the new show and that stuff coming out, I'm on the record now for 8-4.
You are. You're on the record. I'm putting it up on my blackboard right here behind my computer screen.
So you guys feel free. Comment.
So let's just go off from that, though. Let's just go off from that, okay? Because yes, across college football, and I would be intrigued to see how many freshmen are actually playing now in comparison to years past. With the transfer portal, I mean, obviously, this isn't the friggin' 70s and all that with freshmen not being able to play, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to get at is with this South Carolina team, because of what Beamer has been able to do in such a short period of time of flipping this roster around, he's been able to bring in talented pieces. And when I've talked about the future of this program, and when I say I feel like the South Carolina team is still 2 years away from really starting to take things to that next level, that's why I say that. Because when you look at that young talent, now, obviously, there's many factors when we're talking about college football these days, as far as retention, and you got the transfer portal, all that kind of stuff, right? And recruiting plays a role too. As South Carolina, I believe they're 19th, 18th right now in the national rankings for the recruiting class of 2024. Yeah. Which, oh, by the way, that doesn't go anywhere, right? I mean, we still have that. I think with this USC team, we talk about just being so young, is that if they can come into their own quickly, not only should that excite you about this season, but it should excite you about the future, just because they're getting so many in-game experience reps. Let's continue to pick on Blanton for a second.
Hunter, by the way, it's only because it's cut off on the screen share. They're up there.
Here we go. This is the top. Yep. Good call, Intern Joe. So the thing about it, though, is Blanton last year, he began to see more reps because of some of the injuries at linebacker. And now as we look into this season, and even going back into the spring, because of injuries, Blanton had an opportunity to work with the ones in spring practices. So when you talk about things in the past and things that stink, and I'm not saying that you should be, praying that, okay, all these young guys get in there, and obviously you want to be able to have some type of experience out there. But at times this season, if, crap does hit the fan, take a step back. Take a step back and realize, and I think a majority of the fans already understand that. But that's why I say that's the most intriguing part about it is you have so many young guys out here, and the fact that you could have a situation where, you could have three, 4 freshmen out there at the same time, whether you're talking about offense or defense. It's scary, but it also is exciting knowing that this is a core group that could be growing with each other, whether it be freshmen, whether it be sophomores, regardless, just young team. So that's the biggest takeaway for me. This North Carolina game as a whole, Joe, you were at the press conference today.
I was indeed, yes.
What was your biggest takeaway, either from Beam or from some of the players?
I mean, minus me leaving my laptop charger at the Long Family Ops
Off to a
building.
hell of a start. Week
I
1.
know
You got a
it's
long
great. I
season. It's
know.
not even
Long
September, and you're
season, and
already losing
this
your
was a
charger.
brand new laptop charger that I bought yesterday because I lost the other one. So we're off to a great start here after the semester. But no, I was at the pressers today. Heard a lot of good things out of everybody. I was really impressed with Stone Blanton. Number one, for him getting the start. Congrats to him. Really, really earned it. It sounds like, and I mean, Stone just seems a lot more comfortable. Just in general. I mean, it's hard to say on the field because we haven't seen him yet this year, but um, I expect a lot out of Stone Blanton, especially since he is number one on the depth chart. I think that's pretty good evidence to say that, he's the guy now at linebacker. Him, Mokaba, they're the dudes. So I was really impressed with him. Josh Simon as well. He's a lot bigger than I thought he was. Obviously, I saw him at media days, but Josh Simon is a big human. I think he's going to make a very big impact as well. The fact that he was one of the guys that we were talking to shows that he's going to play some kind of role offense. And it's big. I'm assuming it's bigger than I thought. At least I thought Trey Knox would be the one main go-to guy, but I think Simon's going to play a pretty big role in this offense. And then obviously DK Joyner's really special, and Spencer too. Spencer seems locked in, man. Really, really, really comfortable. And it's different. I mean, we kind of saw, I guess, a hint of this last year, right? Like you could tell he was comfortable just with all of the portal talk and where's he going to go. He was comfortable with all that, but like now he's comfortable with where he's at in life and just everything, and just he's ready to go show people, what he can do. And so as you bring up some of his pressure, I was very impressed with what Spencer had to say. Not just
Before we hear from Rattler, because I want to play some of these players today, and I think everyone you hit on. I mean, Stone Blanton, the maturity that he showed today. I mean, here's a young man that came in here. I mean, it's crazy because we obviously, and there's so many Gamecock fans, especially from Gamecock Central, but this fan base as a whole, they know exactly what's going on from a recruiting standpoint. So it's crazy to just see how quickly these young men go from being, okay, he's a high school football player in Mississippi, and now as a sophomore, he's going to be your starting linebacker week 1. But you mentioned Simon. I mean, Josh Simon, I feel like he's going to be a player that Gamecock fans are going to love. Physical and just great hands. We saw that great catch earlier in preseason. He's a big boy. But Rattler today, before I play some of Rattler's sound, his demeanor, and you're going to be able to pick up on if you haven't seen it, his demeanor today was as locked in as I've ever seen him. That's number one. But number two, what I took away from it is he's so ready just to play. He's done with the talking, and that doesn't mean that he was standoffish or, he was rude to the media or anything like that. But what I'm trying to get at is the answers were shorter than usual. It was kind of like, okay, I know I have to go do this. I'll go up there, say what I need to, but I'm just ready to get on the freaking field on Saturday. That was the biggest takeaway from today with Rattler. But let's take a listen. This is Spencer Rattler earlier today talking about North Carolina, getting ready for week 1.
Spencer, how do you guys, approach this week? I know that you've probably been working on a lot of things throughout preseason camp. I mean, was there a major tweak in preparing for North Carolina this week, or kind of the same old?
We're just trying to perfect what we got working for us, make sure we don't beat ourselves. They're going to try to do some things to slow us down, and, we got to do our best to counter that. So we've been practicing everything and just trying to perfect it before Saturday.
What's going on, Spencer? For you personally, how do you feel like you have changed from this point last year to now?
Just more comfortable with this offense. I feel like it suits me a lot better. Not just me, but the group as a whole. And, got a coach that's coached a long time in the NFL, coaching quarterbacks, and I feel real confident with him.
Obviously, a lot of talk about the matchup with you and Drake, even though I guess it's not really truly a matchup. But what do you make of all that type of talk? And certainly not the first time you've been a part of like a big quarterback battle.
So yeah, it'll be fun. But, at the end of the day, my focus is to put my team in the best position to win for us. And, I'm sure he's trying to do the same thing. But, I'm just trying to play clean, trying to make a lot of plays and lead this team to a victory.
Hey, Spencer, for you personally, how much are you looking forward to getting back out there, especially with the way you closed out last season in the final 3 games?
I'm looking forward to it. I'm ready. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go.
Spencer, do you ever get caught up in that it might be a shootout kind of game because North Carolina has such an explosive offense?
We just focus on what we got to do, and if it is like that, it is.
Spencer, I know we've talked about it before in the past. I mean, maybe you didn't even envision being back here for a second year, but now you're here. What does it feel like heading into this game in comparison to when you were playing your first game at South Carolina a year ago?
Like I said, just obviously a year under my belt in this conference, a lot more comfortable. Know what to expect, and just excited to play North Carolina on Saturday on a big time stage.
Yeah, Spencer, kind of going off of that, last year kind of had a tune-up game, right? This year, not so much. I mean, UNC right out of the bat, right out of the gate. Do you notice that there's maybe a little bit more excitement or attention to detail or edge about you guys knowing that, you don't really have a tune-up game this year?
Yeah, I mean, we try to say, you want to have the same mindset for every game, but, we'd be lying to ourselves if we said this game isn't bigger than what we had last year. Every game's big, but this is on a big time stage against a great team. And, we got a challenge on Saturday, and this game we'll see where we're at. So I'm excited to go out there and compete and have fun with the guys.
All right. Spencer Rattler earlier today. Sorry to cut off Colin Taylor. I would have played him if I knew Colin was there. Don't always keep track of which media member's asking what. But again, and I think one of our listeners just even said it. I think it was Hunter. You can tell how locked in he is on Saturday.
Yep.
Now, obviously the players, and just to remind some people, because each year you got to remind people, oh, Colin's hurt. Colin's listening. You know what? Colin's listening. That was an accident, Colin. Let's have Colin's question. That was not done on purpose. I promise, Colin. Colin asks good questions.
Spencer, you
He
mentioned
does
this
ask good
offense
questions.
kind of being a better fit for you and the rest of the skill group. Just, I know, not revealing state secrets, but what about this offense helps kind of tailor it to your skill set, and how excited are you guys to finally kind of debut it this weekend?
I'm excited to debut it this Saturday. That's a good question for D-Lo, though, or Coach Beamer.
And again, I give Colin Taylor a lot of credit. He was trying to crack the code today. He was trying to crack the code.
How much success? I don't know. He used I think the Kevin meme from The Office. Like, I kept the secret so well. Colin, the use of the GIF and the meme and the reference was perfect there, because I mean they weren't saying anything. This offense is under super top secret. So yeah, no one's giving us anything, Mike. It's not fun.
So, Joe, I want to show something real quick as far as Spencer last year statistics. Okay. And I'm glad Shane Beamer, and it's like not a shocker that a coach is going to defend his quarterback, but to see him say like, yeah, like I'm glad he's our quarterback. I think Colin Taylor actually just wrote a story about that today. So another shout out to CT. But the fact that we're hearing so much about Drake May is a hell of a quarterback. I know some Gamecock fans are sick and tired of hearing that, but he's a hell of a quarterback. Okay. He's a hell of a quarterback. But at the same time, too, I feel like Spencer Rattler isn't getting at least as enough recognition heading into this game. All right. I was asked this question today about Caleb Williams on a different show, and someone asked me, do you feel like Rattler is seeing what Caleb Williams is doing and it's adding motivation? I'm sure just as a natural competitor, it is. But honestly, if last year proved anything, it's that Spencer Rattler, he's not a bum. Like, this notion that he's a bum. Guess what? The guy that took his job at Oklahoma, what did he freaking do last year? He won the Heisman Trophy. He won the Heisman freaking Trophy. You know what that proves? It proves that every scout that pays attention to high school football, that was following Caleb Williams, that was telling you that he was that next guy, the one that comes once every blue moon, right? He did exactly what people who follow high school football does. which is he was going to be good. So again, I bring that up just because maybe last year, maybe there was this notion that Rattler had to prove people wrong. And I'm sure he had a chip on his shoulder. I'm sure of it. But I feel like because Caleb won the Heisman, and I'm not saying this is the main reason. I'm just saying it helps. The fact that Caleb won the Heisman, I think it takes more pressure off Rattler. Because not only is he coming back here for year 2, and he can just pray freely, and we're talking about obviously multiple things like, Dal Loggins giving him more leash on the offense and being able just to play free. I think being able to have Williams win the Heisman, it's like, yeah, that quarterback that replaced him is a freaking good quarterback. Now just go out there and play. You're at a new school. So that's the reason I want to bring that up.
Yeah, certainly. And I agree. I think it takes the pressure off Spencer to an extent. I mean, I think last year that storyline was certainly in there and intertwined. It's like, oh, he's going to have the better year at the new school and rah, like, right. But I think Caleb Williams has gone and done, what he's gone and done and winning the Heisman, and Spencer's been able to help South Carolina turn things around. And I mean, each quarterback had their respective journeys. But I think this year, the storyline of, who's better, who's having a better season, or who's going to, play better. I think that's all kind of washed out the window. I think both guys are starting to carve out, a name for themselves respectively at their own schools. Obviously, Caleb Williams won the freaking Heisman, but Spencer still has some work to do for his name and his legacy here. Obviously, I mean, the Clemson win and the Tennessee win are huge, but to come back, I think it says a lot. It says a lot about him and what he wants to leave here, and then also too what he wants to do with his career later on. So I think it's going to be a really good opportunity for Spencer to play, like Mike said, with the pressure off for once. And it's weird to say because, again, it's Spencer Rattler we're talking about.
There'll be some pressure. There'll be some pressure. There'll be some pressure, but it feels like the pressure from a year ago. It's
a lot of it.
You can't even compare it.
Pressure.
You can't even compare it.
No.
That's why that's why I say, like, the pressure's not on him. It feels like, again, he can go out there and play more freely. And, I'm pulling up the stats from last year, and the way that ESPN does it, it has the more recent game on the top. So that's why you see Notre Dame. So go from the top down. And when you look really going back to September, those first 3 games of the season, right? Georgia State, Arkansas, Georgia, and that's not an easy slate, right? Second game of your career, you got to go to Arkansas. You got to play at your first SEC stadium. And then the following week, you got to go play the defending national champs who eventually became the back-to-back defending national champs in Georgia. When you look at the SC State game, I felt like Rattler had a pretty good game. The interceptions in that game, if I remember correctly, they came on drop passes that easily couldn't have, could have been completions. So you look at from just a statistical standpoint, I felt like that SC State game is when things started to change a little bit. Now, there's no question that the offense struggled at times. You look at the Missouri game. If it wasn't for Xavier Luedecke having the kickoff return for 100 yards against Texas A&M, I don't know if the Gamecocks win that one. And then Florida, of course. But I bring that up because for Rattler, you saw why people were so high on him coming out of high school. You saw why he was the Big Ten Freshman of the Year when he finally got his opportunity before being replaced by Caleb Williams. So I bring that up because we know how the season ended. The big question, and none of us are going to friggin' know until Saturday, is what are the growing pains with this offense? I know Rattler said a couple weeks ago that he hasn't experienced any growing pains. I think that's confidence in him saying that because naturally there will be some type of growing pains with this offense. I mean, that's just Clemson's going through an OC change. There's going to be growing pains. That's what happens when you have a new OC. And the fact that you have a Power 5 matchup week 1, you don't have the luxury of being able to ease in and be able to work off some of those kinks. You have to do it on the fly when the bullets are coming at you hot. So for Rattler, I don't think it's necessarily what is he going to look like. It's more so what is the rest of the offense around him. And Joe, as you brought up at the beginning of the show,
Yeah.
the offensive line, that question mark is where it really starts. And even though I've kind of brushed it off, the running back situation, if they're not able to at least get some type of consistency, again, you need the O-line to give you a push. But if you're not able to at least get some type of consistency from your running back room, positive yardage, it's just like a pitcher who's only throwing fastballs, right? If you can't have your breaking ball going, if you can't throw a changeup and it's not hitting, if you can't run the football, it's the same deal. Because you'll be a one-trick pony. Pass, 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 defensive line, they are going to tee off on you. And as much as this fan base wants to write off North Carolina's defense because of what happened last year, which what I would say to that is, what about your defense? What about your defense? You allowed 198 yards rushing per game last year. That was the 14th worst in the country. On top of that, you lost Zach Pickens. So I bring that up because if you're going to say that about North Carolina's defense stinking, and I get it, they stunk. But you have issues too. You have flaws as well. South Carolina, if they can't get a push against this North Carolina team, week one, from a running standpoint, it could be a long season. But it also will struggle the offense as a whole when you're talking about trying to get the passing game going. So it all goes hand in hand, Joe.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike, I'm going to stop you there real quick so we can get to the ads. Let me talk to you guys about our good friends over at Liberty Tax in Irmo, Lexington, and Columbia. Tax ID is that uncertain feeling you get right before doing your taxes, but you don't have to go through it alone. The tax team at Liberty Tax in Irmo, Lexington, and Columbia will walk you through the process, clear up any confusion, and guarantee you'll get the biggest possible refund or your money back. It's tax time. If you're in a hurry for your refund, call the tax team at Liberty Tax. Fast, accurate, and guaranteed. On the other hand, if you think you might be owing Uncle Sam, talk to Liberty Tax Team to make sure you're not paying more than you should owe. They'll find every possible deduction for you. Locally owned and operated, staffed by tax professionals from your neighborhood. Open 9 to 9 on weekdays and 9 to 5 on Saturdays with multiple service options. Start through the Liberty Tax mobile app or through the desktop portal. Make an appointment or just walk in. Give a call to upload your tax documents. And when you come in, your return will be ready to review and sign. Give them a call at 803-462-5576. Once again, 803-462-5576 for all of your tax needs this tax season.
And today's show is also brought to you by our good friend Clint Hammond at the Movement Mortgage Network. He has been a long-time supporter of Gamecock Central as well as these GC Live shows. We've talked about it before. Our very own Wes Mitchell, former Gamecock quarterback Perry Orth, when it was time to get a new home, they needed to go through that process. Clint made it easier for them. You talk about trying to find the cheapest rate, and if you've been trying to find a home the last couple of months, really the last year, you know how difficult that has been. Those rates are going up. Clint and his team do an outstanding job of being able to help you out. So give Clint a call. Again, over at the Movement Mortgage, 803-771-6933. Moving things along here. We have Lady Bree bringing up a question about, or more so a statement, and then a question. Talking about DeCarrion Joyner. Lady Bree, good to hear from you. So Mike, I stated last year I thought DK would be a great running back. I've heard media members saying he's looking great and the team saying it. Someone suggested y'all just blowing smoke. I'll say this, from what we've seen in the limited practices. So I believe the media had 4 practices that we could attend. And of those 4 practices, I mean, you're looking at about 20-something periods, maybe 22 periods that we were able to watch. And I'd be lying to you if I said that we see a lot during those periods. It's typically, special team stuff where it doesn't involve any of the trickeration or just indie periods. And an indie period is just an individual period where you're working with your individual positional coach. So we don't get to see too much, but from what we did see, there was that explosiveness from DK. He has this knack of just being able to, when he gets the ball, he's not dancing around. There's so many running backs when they are younger, you see it more so in high school, but when they get the ball, they're dancing around. They're not hitting the hole hard. And naturally, because they're dancing around, they're wasting more time. Instead of going north-south, they're going east-west. With DK, because of his experience of being a quarterback and being someone that has had an opportunity to do all the Wildcat packages as well in South Carolina's backfield over the years, even though it's not true apples to apples, he has an idea of what that looks like behind the line of scrimmage. So I feel like that's played a big role as to why he has had the success that he's had. Now, here's the issue. When we talk about Dakereon Joyner having a good preseason camp, looking good in the scrimmages, from what we've been told from people around the program, that doesn't mean, and I think some people realize this, but I need to just put this out there, that doesn't mean he's looking like Marcus Lattimore. That doesn't mean he's looking like George Rogers. All that means is that he's going out there and he's giving you a chance. And I think with this South Carolina running back room, realistically, the expectation should be just having a running back room that can give you a chance. Just being consistent, picking up the yardage that you need, right? I mean, obviously, in a perfect world, being able to run the football close to 200 yards every game, that would be a dream. And if you look over the last couple of years, especially in the Beamer era, when South Carolina has been able to run the football for about 175 yards, 200 yards, they win a majority of those games. And I'm sure if you look across college football outside of the Armies and Navies, the Air Forces of the world that run the football about 40, 50 times a game, the teams that do have success running it about, 175 yards, 200 yards a game, they're going to usually have a winning record, right? More times than not, those games are going to be games that they won. So with this South Carolina team, do I feel like that's what they need to do in order to have success from a running game standpoint? Not necessarily. And I think the real reason why is because you have a really talented quarterback. Now, obviously, again, like we've talked about, it's not just about Rattler. The O-line needs to come into its own. The receivers, if you think back to a couple of years ago, I think back to Shi Smith's senior year. Outside of Shi, no one wanted to get open that season. So you have talent at receiver. You have talent at tight end. The guys need to get open, right? Guys need to get open. Give your quarterback an opportunity to just go out there and play. And with this running back room, if they can just get the consistent push from their offensive line and they're able just to get those yards, just a couple. You don't have to go too crazy, right? 3rd and 2. You go to DK, you go to Mario Anderson, you go to whoever the heck is in the backfield. Just picking up those yardage. That's what I'm talking about. That's what the South Carolina team needs from their running back room. Now, is that sustainable when we're talking about the future of the program, when we're looking ahead to 2024, 2025? No, because what happens after this year? Well, Spencer Rattler will be gone, right? Things change a little bit. So I think with this season, it's about being just good enough in that running back room. I understand there's frustration from some of the fan base as far as, man, South Carolina shouldn't have put themselves in this situation when you're talking about the running back room. Mm-hmm. What I would say to that, though, is could anyone have predicted that Lavassier Carroll would have to retire a couple months back? And I'm not saying that USC was throwing all their eggs in one basket there, but at the same time, too, it changed the entire mindset of how people portrayed this running back room. I'm sure there'd still be people that would be upset, Joe, heading into this season, or worry, whatever word you want to use. But if Lavassier Carroll didn't have to retire from football, I'm sure the mood from this fan base as far as their expectations about the running back room would be just a little bit different. A little bit different.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think unfortunately for Lavassier Carroll, he had the injury that's holding him out and all that stuff, forcing him to retire from football. It sucks. And Lavassier is a great human, a great person. So, I mean, it especially sucks to see him go down like that. But no, I mean, I think if you were there, he was probably your guy, right? That you would expect to come through camp and show signs of life and build and just kind of work towards that starting spot this summer. Obviously, he's not in the room, so there's a little bit more concern. But I think there's just the concern that DK hasn't played running back before. I don't necessarily think anyone's doubting
Mhm.
DK's athletic ability or
And
his
that's
ability
fair.
to find the football.
Totally
Yeah,
fair.
and it's absolutely fair to worry about it because I mean it is a whole different position. We saw. I mean, speaking on Lavassier Carroll, like it took him a whole season to kind of get back. I mean, Georgia, he was playing safety, so it took him a whole season to readjust. And granted, you're switching sides of the football. It's a little bit different. You can, switch from wide receiver to running back a little bit easier, but I mean, it's still, kind of the same process, and it's a different position entirely, or not entirely, but you guys get what I'm saying. So I think for DK, since he's played offense, there's a little bit of ease there, and the fact that he's done it well, a little bit more ease there. And I mean, all the reports coming out are that he's the guy and he can run the football. I mean, we've seen the transformation in his body. So I think the only thing we're missing, Mike, is just tape of him playing running back and him, performing. I think that's the only thing. And if he goes out and plays well against North Carolina, I think there's going to be a lot of ease just for the rest of the season. Because if he goes out and does anything remotely close to good, like just puts together a solid game and is the running back, like plays like the guy at running back, I think, there's going to be a lot more ease going into the season. And it'll probably be a lot of ease for Dowell too, knowing that he has a guy that he can rely on out of the backfield. Just kind of giving you that consistency out of the backfield is what you need, especially in the SEC. If you don't have a consistent ground attack, you're going to lose a lot of games.
I pulled up. I'm looking at it right now, but you guys can see it on your screen. What DK has done during his career at South Carolina. It is weird sometimes when you look at some of these stat lines for players just because of that COVID year. Because of that COVID year, to see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seasons up there. But that's just where we are in college football. That and being able to maintain a year of eligibility if you play 4 games. We see the question. It says, or statement, I will be curious to see, if you want to go back, be curious to see how many running plays we have Saturday. I think if Gargiulo and crew can get things going, they will roll. I'll say this, as much as I do feel like this team will be a pass first team, but just because you have a very talented quarterback, no coach in the country would tell you that they'd rather throw the football, whatever, how many times, opposed to if they were able to run the football. Why? I mean, this goes back to, I think Woody Hayes said it back in the day, the old Ohio State coach. When you throw the football, 3 things can happen and 2 of them are bad, So the point being is, as good I feel like as Rattler can be this season, this passing attack, if USC is able to have success running on Saturday, I expect them to continue to go to that. Now, going back to last season, I believe there were 2 games in which they ran the football 40 plus times. And in both those games, they won. I believe it was the Kentucky game. And I'd have to go back to double check the other one. Maybe it was Charlotte. I'll have to go back and double check. But the point being is, I feel like, you're going to see a team that comes out there and they're really going to mix things up. I mean, I think that's the beauty, right? I mean, we could sit here and talk about for both teams, but for South Carolina in particular, and Joe, we talked about it last week a little bit. If you're North Carolina, you want to talk about having to prepare for the unknowns. You have to go back and you have to watch some of the offenses that Dal Loggins was OCing in the NFL. On top of that, DK,
South
what
Carolina's
he did to
doing
you.
the same thing for North Carolina's OC. But I agree. I think it adds to the element of surprise a little bit. And then, I was laughing because the DK element. You've been in this situation before with a player like DK. His capabilities at every other position but the one he's playing at.
Oh, and this team knows it better than anybody. And if they're not prepared for, and that's the other thing too, and you can do this.
I don't necessarily think they're prepared for what he can do at running back. I think, and they're going to try their best, but what I'm saying is nobody's seen DK at running back, so you can't prepare for him. I mean, I guess you kind of prepare based off of what he's like at wide receiver, but I think he's reinvented himself so much that it's an entirely different look with him at running back.
You can't truly prepare for it, but what I'll say is that if that Duke's Mayo Bowl game taught North Carolina anything, and it's tough, even like DK said today, and
I like what you're about to say.
And on the show last night, we had DK come out with Heather Hines, goalkeeper for South Carolina women's soccer, but DK and I were talking about it a lot. It's like, he told me that he thinks about that Duke's Mayo Bowl game probably every other day. And as he addressed today to the media, it's like it's the elephant in the room. It's hard not to think about it. It's hard not to talk about it, especially when you know this guy's going to be a starter. He's beloved by this fan base. But on top of that, this is the first time that this team, South Carolina, has played in that stadium since the Duke's Mayo Bowl. And what happened in that Duke's Mayo Bowl game? Well, they played against North Carolina. So there's so many similarities. And at the same time, too, we know this, none of that really matters, right? None of that matters when you go onto the field. However, where it does matter is in the preparation, because North Carolina, like you said, they don't know what Joyner's going to do at running back. They don't know what he's going to look like. But at the same time, too, you have to prepare. And I'm pulling up his stats right here. And another stat to throw out there, and I told Joyner this last night, DK wasn't even aware of this. He's on the verge of becoming the 5th player to join the 600 club in FBS history. Savell Newton's already part of that club. And what that means is 600 career receiving yards, 600 career rushing yards, 600 career passing yards. Now, I think the passing yards one, depending on what they plan on doing with DK this year, it could be a little bit trickier. He still had 100-something passing yards last year, I believe. You scroll on down. Yeah, you see, and a lot of that came from that Vanderbilt game on the trick play. But the point being is DK has proven, never mind the fact that we haven't even talked about special teams, he can do a little bit of everything. So that's just DK. But on top of that, you got to prepare for Spencer Rattler. You have to prepare for Juice Wells. And you don't even know what Juice is going to look like because there's been all these reports out there. And that's what they do. They have the graduate students. They pay attention to what's being said on the message boards. You know, what is cocky Gamecock, whatever, 3246. What is he saying on the message boards? What is being said? They try to get information. What's being said on social media? So we don't know exactly what it will look like when Juice Wells is out there on the field. We know, or at least got to give Beamer at least the benefit of the doubt when he says that Wells will play, on top of the fact that Nick Harbor will play. But what will it look like? You know, someone could play, but if they go out there, they might only play a couple of plays. So there's so many weapons that South Carolina has, on top of the fact that they have the new OC, that I truly believe from an offensive standpoint for North Carolina, they're going to have to spend a lot of time on their defense. They're going to spend a lot of time on special teams, and that's going to take time away from preparing for their offense for for South Carolina's defense. So there's a lot of benefits heading into this game. And we could say this about North Carolina too, but the difference is if you're South Carolina, you know how they want to beat you. They have one of the best quarterbacks, at least on paper, heading into the season. And they also have a freaking good running back too, which should not be overlooked.
Yeah. I mean, you got to be crazy to think that Pete Lembo doesn't have a play for Dakereon Joyner in there somewhere. I think Pete, of all people, would be the one guy that's got to get his slice of the DK freakishly athletic, unreal offensive weapon pie. So yeah, he'll definitely be playing some special teams along with his big role on offense. I think you're going to see a lot of Dakereon Joyner. I think last year, I mean, with him at wide receiver, it was hard to get him the ball a lot, especially with the resurgence of Juice, Xavier Leggett. It was a crowded room. This year it's even more crowded, but getting him at running back, I think you're going to hear his name called a lot more than you did last year and years previous, just because he's going to be that guy that's going to be relied on to go get those tough yardage up the middle. I don't think they're going to be relying on Juju too much to go up the middle. And maybe I could be wrong, could use Juju in some short yardage situations. But I mean, I see DK just being in a lot of the packages because of his size, his speed, his durability, just the way he holds the football, runs with the football. I think it's going to be really fun to see just how much of an impact he will have on this offense, because the way everyone's talking about it now, it's going to be a very, very big impact compared. And I mean, last year, the whole conversation was he's a great leader off the field. He's great for us. And it sucks we can't get him the ball. I think this year it's the exact opposite. I mean, obviously he's a great leader off the field, but I mean, the talk is more about his play on the field than it is, off the field. And he's a great person and all this stuff. Awesome. But all I'm hearing, Mike, is just how well he's adapted and how important
Mhm.
he's going to be to this offense and football team. So it's different from last year for sure.
Before we answer some questions, because there's been a bunch that have been coming in. If you haven't asked the question yet and you want your question in before we wrap things up tonight, now is the time. Shoot your question in. I have my vision of what this offense is going to look like, Joe.
Yeah.
But to you, what do you envision on Saturday?
What do I envision on Saturday of what this offense will look like? I think we're going to see a lot of run and shoot. I think it's going to be, run the ball on first or second down, and then you mix in to start the game. I think it's going to be very pro style, run the ball for a second down, try to get what you can, and then let Spencer throw it a little bit. But I think they're going to warm Spencer up, kind of try to get him in rhythm, use the backfield, use a Nick Harbor to try and get a big play or two. Early on in the game, I think you're going to see a lot of chances at big plays. Not everyone's going to hit, but I think these two offenses are going to duel back and forth, big play after big play. It's going to be sloppy, obviously, because it's the first game. You're not going to go out there and see a Tennessee-like performance where everything was clicking on all cylinders. It's going to be sloppy. You're playing somebody else.
I'm going to clip this if it happens, though. I'm going to clip this, and we're going to use that later if I go out there and put up 63.
Yeah, for real. But, I think with the running back room, the whole thing of we don't know who we're going to play, I think they're going to use the running back just as much as they would. It's just the whole question mark and the worry and concern of this year was just about who it was going to be. And I think they found that guy in DK to the point where they're like, all right, cool. We're going to run our offense now. It wasn't like they had to switch anything up or any of that. I think the philosophy that Dowell brought here with the idea that Lavassier Carroll or somebody in the portal or somebody is going to be their running back, I think that philosophy is still intact. I think they trust DK at running back in this offense. So I don't really think they're making any changes per se for just the running back position in general. Now, maybe they're not going to be running the ball as much because of the offensive line or something like that. But I think it's going to be pretty business as usual. Run and shoot, get Spencer in a rhythm, warm him up, and, try to execute as much as you can with limiting the sloppiness of week one. So that's what I think is going to happen. Pretty simple, pretty basic answer, but that's what I got.
Yeah, for me, I think with this offense, what you're going to see is you're going to see an offense that wants to go fast, very fast at that. A fast-paced offense that wants to use tempo, wants to use the ability of the speed that they have with their players around on the field. I'm trying to do 8 things at once here. As you see from some of the practice footage, but they want to use the speed that they have. And it's when you're talking about the explosive plays, it's being able to take chances down the field vertically, but at the same time too, using the entire field from sideline to sideline. And that's why I feel like guys like Marion Brown, Eddie Lewis, right? Even a Nicholas Harbor, I feel like USC is really going to take advantage of their speed by being able to stretch the field horizontally from sideline to sideline, east to west. And when you do that, it forces teams to cover the field. It forces teams to spread out, and that opens up the running game. Now, the reason why I wanted to specifically mention that part, how many times – I already know the answer. How many times, Joe, after games last year, especially when we had Michael Scarnecchia on, Scar said, I would love to see them throw the ball towards the middle of the field.
A lot.
How many times?
A lot. I felt like every week, and I'm excited to get Scar back. We'll get to that in a second, but
they need to use the entire field, okay? This isn't arena football. You're not just going to freaking go down the field and just air it out, 30, 40 yards no. You have to be able to mix other things in there. And if you're an offense is trying to figure out what you're going to do from a running game standpoint, being able to take advantage of throwing crossing patterns, it's really going to allow you to not only have success down the field at some point, because then you can take some chances, keeps defenses honest, but it's also going to open up the run game because defenses are going to have to prepare for you to come out there and attack them sideline to sideline. It will be able to soften up the middle a little bit to hopefully get that run game going.
Yeah, absolutely. No, what I was gonna pose the question to you, Mike, was I've heard the doubters of Dowell Loggins will say, oh yeah, he doesn't know how to spread the field because he's been playing on NFL hash marks. He's talked about it certainly being an adjustment. Mike, do you think it's going to be any of an adjustment for Dowell at all? And I mean, do you have any thoughts on just kind of what he's going to do in game one, coaching from the box? Does that make a difference? Like, run me through what you expect to see from Dowell, and do you think the hash marks really make a difference? And
I don't think it's going to be to the point where, to the naked eye, to most fans, they're going to be able to watch and be like, man, he needs to do this, and that a little bit differently. I think if there's anything, whether they have success or whether there's times where they run into a brick wall, that Dal himself is going to go back and be like, okay, week 2 or just moving forward. And I'm sure this is a process for the first couple of weeks. It's going to take him some time to adjust. He's going to go back and be like, all right, we did it this way. We had success, or you know what? We tried to go out there. We didn't have success because of this. This is what we need to do in order to tweak it, to make it work. In the NFL game, we might be able to get away with this, right? Because of the way the hash marks are. So I think it'll be one of those things that you have trial and error, but even if they have success or they don't have success, he's going to be watching and he's going to be taking, I mean, that's what coaches do, but that's what I'm expecting, is that he'll go back to the drawing board, even if they do have success in some of these plays, and he's going to make adjustments to it. He's going to say, okay, man, we didn't have the spacing that I was hoping for on the field side during this trips look, or, you know, we ran this smash route concept. We didn't have the play look the way that I envisioned it looking. So it's like anything in life. It's going to be trial and error. And I truly believe this offense will get better as the season goes on.
Yeah.
But I also think that based on what we've heard from Loggins, is that he has the self-awareness to understand what his players want to do. He understands what their strengths and weaknesses are. And again, this is the honeymoon phase. We'll be talking about things a week from now, and it could be different. But at least heading into this first game, based on everything that he's said, based on everything the players have told us, and based on everything our sources at Gamecock Central have told us, is that Dal Loggins understands what the players' strengths and weaknesses are, and he has been doing his darnest to make dang sure that they're going to be in the best position to succeed. It's not going to be, hey, we haven't done this play yet. Let's do that. Let's force this, because we've seen that before in the past from South Carolina. I don't expect that to be the case. I really don't.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think your Dowell synopsis is pretty spot on. I think they're obviously offensively going to leave the game wishing they could do more, and I think that's just how every week is offensively. There's always stuff you want to execute on more. I think the only example of that not being the case is probably the Tennessee game last year. And that, we know how often those happen where you're clicking on every cylinder. I mean, Satterfield walked out of that game saying, like, I don't know if we could have done anything wrong during that game. So I think, it's going to be an adjustment for Dowell, certainly, calling plays in the college game, but he's going to figure it out. I think, business will move right along and you'll adjust week to week, like Mike said. So, kind of get into some of these questions here. We'll get through these and then we'll bump our promos for everything this week. A lot of fun stuff on the way. Nick asks, Sellers will be redshirted most likely, you think, this year? ? From my eyes, I think they're going to try to do everything they can to redshirt him. Obviously, play him as much as you possibly can without, losing the red shirt. But I think that's the goal. At least let him come in maybe in some garbage time games and show some flashes of what he could be and shut him down when it comes close to that red shirt. I think, he's not, knock on wood here, not going to play a very big role. You have Luke Doty, obviously, Tanner Bailey, those guys backing up Spencer. So I think if it comes down to it, they're going to red shirt him.
I think they're going to try to do what they can to be able to get him on the field and see what he can bring to the table as far as a short yardage situation. We're talking so much about the unknowns with South Carolina's offensive line, and especially the running back room as well. if you've seen the Swamp Kings documentary that came out the other day, right? How many times did you see Tim Tebow come out there on the field? And it's difficult to compare Tebow to anybody. However, as you see Sellers running on your screen right now, that has been something I've noticed on the message boards over the last couple weeks, couple months.
The Tim Tebow comparison.
Fan base would love to see Sellers come out there in short yardage situations. Now, regardless if that is their plan, the beauty is in comparison to what Florida went through, and Florida's team obviously was very, very good. Very good. But the difference is back then, if you went out there for one play, you lost your eligibility. So you at that point, you had to make sure that it was going to be worth it to put a freshman out there. So I think what Sellers is, whether it be North Carolina, whether it be Furman, regardless of who it is, I think USC is going to find ways to try to get him out there on the field if they feel like it is in the best interest of the team to continue to use him in whatever role that is. If they do decide to use him in some type of package moving forward, if they feel like it can help them win games this year, then I think they'll do that. I think they will. However, if they don't, and that's the other beauty of it, it doesn't have to be the first 4 games. You can kind of spread things out. And if you've been under a rock the last couple days, even going back to last week, Shane Beamer announced that Luke Doty is the number 2 quarterback. And if you've been following our show, you've been following Gamecock Central, going back to last winter, really, but especially the spring, that should not surprise you one bit. And that's not a slate against Sellers. It's just the reality of, okay, he's a freshman quarterback. He's still learning. So I think it's going to be a combination of wait and see how the season goes. Is it in the best interest of the team on top of how much are they using him, right?
Yep.
Is it worth putting him out there? I'm making this up in some of those packages, and he's only playing, I don't know, a play a game, 2 plays a game. Is that worth it? Can you justify that for a year of eligibility if you feel like he can be the guy in the future? I mean, obviously, South Carolina is doing a hell of a job of recruiting some talented young quarterbacks. You have Dante Reno, who's going to be arriving in January. We know Landon Duckworth, class of 2026. We know there's some other quarterbacks of the class of 2025 they're going after. They have some talented quarterbacks that they're going to be adding to that room. And while Sellers is going to have the leg up on everybody, if you feel like he's going to be the guy in the future, you got to ask yourself, is it worth using that year of eligibility? That's the question. And right now, I don't even know if South Carolina truly knows that answer because, again, I feel like they're going to play the wait and see game. Put him out there a little bit. Is this in the best interest of our team for this year? Is this the best interest of our team in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the next question same thing. Do you think Sellers will play at all this season? Kind of just touched on that. And I mean, if you're asking me, like if Shane called me up last offseason and said, hey, intern Joe, like we want you to be the new offensive coordinator. Like we're getting this kid Sellers in. And granted,
what a conversation that would be on the phone.
Yeah, exactly. But he's like, what do you want to do with this kid Sellers? And if I'm the OC, I'm not risking it just because of what he's been able to show. I mean, the short yardage package, we saw it with Pat Mahomes in the NFL. It's where guys get dinged up, and it's where they get dinged up bad. I don't think you really want your I don't know if you can call him a star quarterback yet, but potentially star quarterback of the future. I wouldn't run him in for any short yardage situation, get his knee blown out or something like that. I think that's what you have. And not to say you're putting DK Joyner in there to blow his knee out or anything, but I think that's what DK Joyner at running back is, being brought into running back for, to be able to go into some of those short yardage situations and get
you don't feel good. You don't feel good with Sellers. I know what you're saying. I'm just playing devil's advocate.
Diving into the pile. No, I don't.
I'm just playing devil's advocate. You don't feel good.
No,
you don't feel better about it knowing that he's up to 245.
No, absolutely not. No.
Okay.
Because you just don't want to take a risk with a kid like that. Like if he is everything that you say he is, and all of the potential and excitement and wowing in the spring game and all that, you don't risk an injury like that, because it's a serious knee injury or something like that. It cripples him for.
And and just real quickly, just to piggyback off of what Joe's saying and kind of what we've been talking about with Sellers, but Lynn brings up saying we have ruined so many freshman quarterbacks, throwing them into the fun. That is the beauty of this. And just to piggyback off it just a little bit more, we'll move to the next question.
Baby.
Last night with Joyner on the show, and you can actually see the full video. Again, this was the Garnet Knights Unplugged, little new Garnet Trust show that we did over at the new CB18 bar that Steve Tannehill and Cox by 90 recently opened up down in 5 Points. We had DK as well as Heather Hines, goalkeeper of USC Women's Soccer there. But last night, one of the things that DK said, I just want to read this quote real quick. We can watch the video on Gamecock Central. And by the way, if you're not a subscriber to Gamecock Central, this story on GC is free, but we have a weekly special right now. Okay, the kickoff to a new season, 50% off your first year of Gamecock Central. If you're a new subscriber, head on over. You'll be able to hit the link, sign up. I mean, shoot, pay about $50 for the year, something like that. I mean, you can't beat that. Can't beat that. You get football, then obviously basketball, baseball, everything else in between. Recruiting, of course, is a big thing with Gamecock Central. You'll get the best. You'll get all the access to On3 and the incredible database that it has. But just reading something real quick. DK last night, when I asked him, I said, who's a player that fans should be keeping an eye on? And he said it should be Lenora Sellers. And I just wanted to read a quote real quick. He said, quote, his locker is 2 lockers down from mine, so I talk to him often. When he has great days and when he has bad days, I'm always there just to pick his head up. One thing that I always tell him is just to stay true to yourself. Don't ever let someone tell you what you can't do in this era of playing quarterback. Just to stay true to yourself and to never give up on your dreams. If you want something, then go get it. It sounds so simple. And it's like, wow. I mean, DK obviously is just an incredible human being.
Unbelievable human, Mike.
He's gone through this. He's gone through this. He came in, the South Carolina hero, Mr. Football for South Carolina at Fort Dorchester. Yep. He was supposed to be the guy at quarterback. Now, I'm not comparing quarterback like Sellers versus DK. My point being is he understands it. So for DK,
that's so clutch
to mention him, this should excite fans. Yeah. It should excite fans.
It's huge to have a guy like DK in the locker room for Lenore's freshman season. Whatever they do, if Shane listened to my rant just there and said not to play him or whatever.
Oh yeah, Shane just texted me and said, "Hell of a rant there by Intern Joe."
Exactly. No, but so if they somehow watch this and listen and decide not to play him, I think you've got a guy in DK Joyner that, I mean, whatever they decide to do with Lenore's, whether he goes out there and is the next, they have the Tebow package with him, or Spencer gets hurt or something. Who knows what could happen? But I think it should excite fans to have, like Mike said, a guy who's been through the exact same thing, all the hype, everything. Just have a guy who's been through that, not only physically but mentally as well. Because Shane's talked about it too. Even just guys trying to drown out some of the noise, especially all their star freshmen. So I think it's huge to have a guy like DK in there for Lenore's, just because he's going to be able to, kind of pick apart his head and just, be there when he needs it. Plain and simple.
Let's stay with DK. Let's stay with DK. Cody asked, over under 1.5 touchdown passes this season for DK. Joe, I'll let you answer this first. I will say this, though. Just want to throw this out there, okay? Give you an idea. Because as we know, DK has done everything. He's run the football, thrown the football. He's caught passes, done special teams. DK, in his career, he has 2 touchdown passes. Okay? He has 2 touchdown passes. Now, the most passes he's ever attempted in a season was his redshirted freshman year back in 2019 through 28 passes. But I bring that up just because, you have an idea of how many he's thrown, and obviously you have a very good quarterback in Spencer Rattler there. Do you think DK will throw more than 1.5 touchdown passes this year?
Yeah, and I'm going to reset the line to 2. I think, or 2.5.
Really? You gonna take the over at 2.5?
Yeah. You know what? I'll go as far.
Do you think he's going to throw 3 this year?
3 touchdowns. Yeah.
Wow.
There's a chance. It's so one would come on a punt fake, some kind of special teams fake. and then you got another one, just kind of like a little pop pass, something like that in a big game. I don't know. I think 2.5 is a reasonable line. Realistically, it's probably under 2.5. But I would take the over of Cody's line of 1.5. I think he'll because they're gonna do it once. They're gonna run some kind of weird fake. 2, I think it's a long season, and if he performs well at running back, they have so many different looks to run stuff out of. Like they'll just, it'll open up a world of fake plays.
So what did we talk about? We talked about the 600 club. Now, is that something South Carolina should necessarily worry about? No. However, and this is going to probably piss some people off, but I put this in my bold predictions that just came out on Gamecock Central. I don't know if that dropped today or yesterday with Colin Taylor.
Yeah.
I put out all our predictions. The reason I can see this happening is because, and I'm not saying it will happen, but South Carolina gets to a bowl game, there's always the possibility of players opting out. Who's to say Spencer Rattler wouldn't opt out? That's not saying that that's what I hope will happen. But the point being is there's a lot of unknowns. So 2 touchdown passes this year. Look, he's playing running back. We've seen how many times we've seen halfbacks throw passes. That's what happened last year. It was a little trick play from a wide receiver, and I would consider him in that point kind of like a running back. It was like a orbit motion, if I remember correctly. At least I believe that's what they called it.
There's so much passing.
Jalen Brooks said that's what they call that orbit motion that they do. But the point being is DK, at least we're assuming, because he's going to be the starting running back, he's going to have the ball in his hands more this year than he's ever had in a season, right? I'm looking at the numbers right now, okay? Number of rushing attempts that he's had in his career, 64. Most rushing attempts that he had in a season was back during that redshirt freshman season when he was playing quarterback. 29 attempts, okay? Passing attempts, most he's had in a season, 28. So we start adding up these numbers here. 64, 45 catches. If I do the math out, and I'm not including special teams here, but ballparking it, you're just under 150 touches in your career. And that's a 5-year career, okay? We redshirted one of those years. But my whole point is he'll probably have more touches this season than he's had in all those years combined.
Yeah, exactly.
So the fact that he already has 2 touchdown passes, and those touchdown passes came, and obviously, one of them came in the Duke's Mayo Bowl, but he was listed as a receiver that year. The other one listed as a receiver. I don't think it's crazy to think that he's going to hit the over. I'm going to go with the over. 3, though, I don't know about 3, Joe, but I definitely will take the 1.5.
Yeah, absolutely. As I get back to the comments here, get a couple more. My laptop is about to die.
Yeah, we'll wrap up. Intern Joe, he doesn't have that laptop.
My laptop charger is at the long video.
How much juice you have left, Joe?
I'm at like 8%. So
okay, we're gonna wrap up. Let's answer the rest of these questions. Tyler says, do y'all think the O-line has a chance to be a good bit better than last season? I do, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be because of the players they have. I'm not saying that this group isn't better than last year's group. I know that last year's group took a beating at times because they were there for a while in terms of that unit. The reason why I feel like they can be better is because they have a new offensive coordinator. And I feel like you'll see more man blocking schemes in comparison to zone blocking. And the reason I say that is because they really struggled with zone blocking over the last 2 years. So I think the combination of the talent they've brought in here, but more so because you have a new play caller, should make you optimistic in believing that the O-line will have more success this year. Again, how quickly they develop that rapport, that's the biggest question.
Yeah, I was going to say, the only thing holding them back is themselves. Just getting good and tight-knit with each other is their biggest thing. If they play well as a unit, and we saw that last year, they got way better as a unit as the year went on. So I think it all depends on how well they come out as playing as a unit, and if they can do that, they're going to have a lot of success. Big Red, how many times will DK throw the ball against UNC? Every time he throws against these guys, we win.
Where are you setting the line at? Are you just going to set it at half? Is he going to throw it or not?
I think he's going to throw it. Yeah. I think this staff is.
What would you set the line at?
Probably 2. I think that he'll try to throw it twice. Because I think the staff thinks it's funny. They're playing into the whole DK and Charlotte against UNC thing. I think he's going to throw the ball more than once. I don't know. But I think the staff thinks it's really funny, or I shouldn't. Well, not. But I think they're playing into the whole DK at Bank of America Stadium against UNC. I think they realize, all of the elephant in the room, as DK said. So I think they're going to play into it. He'll throw a pass, maybe 2. I don't know.
I'm playing it safe. I'm just going with the over at a half. I mean, if you want to have better odds and all that stuff, you can move the line up to 1.5, 2.5, 3.5. I'm just going with one throw. I think DK will have one throw. What that play will look like, I don't know if it'll be the first play. I don't know if it'll be a goal line situation. I don't know if it's coming out and having Rattler motion out, and he's
for him.
I mean, you could have a situation where Rattler motions out, and then DK's in the backfield already in a shotgun. So I think we'll see him throw at least once.
Yep, absolutely. Lynn asked, why couldn't DK5 take the Tebow package? It's exactly what I'm saying. In terms of the whole DK or Sellers debate, I think Lynn and I are thinking very much alike here. And
I don't disagree. I don't disagree, Joe. But here's why. What did you just say? Why you're worried about Sellers doing that? And just give me the short answer. Why are you worried about
getting hurt? Then yes, I get it. Yeah.
Okay. Who's your starting running back? What happens if your starting running back gets hurt because you're trying to overuse him?
And that's why you use the freshman in the short yardage package to begin with. That was why they used Tebow, because they didn't want to hurt. Yep. So it's a great.
I'm just using your words against you to just be a wise guy.
Yeah. But I mean, again, I think you already dealt with
it. But what you're saying though, I don't
more sense
entirely disagree with it though. Peyton says if Rattler goes for 300 yards, 20 of 25, 4 touchdowns. Is that good enough to win Saturday night?
Yeah.
1,000%. Especially based on looking at that stat line. If he has no interceptions, I mean, that's the big thing to me.
No interceptions is a big one.
If he
has that stat line and 2 interceptions, they lose.
Our coworker of our parent company, I guess you would say parent company, on 3, JD Bakel, he was talking about this matchup. And one of the things he mentioned, and I thought he was right on it. And JD has played football at Baylor. He played at Cornell. He understands football. Sometimes your best defense is your offense. And when you look at this game, everyone wants to talk about Drake May. What's the best thing that South Carolina can do to help their chances of winning? Keeping him off the field. So when we're talking about protecting the football, if Rattler is able to go out there and he's able to just protect the ball, right? No interceptions, no fumbles from the running backs, receivers. They protect the football. I really like South Carolina's chances. I really. Now, you want to throw the 300 yards in there, 20 of 25, 4 touchdowns. So, I mean, shoot, at that point, we're looking at 14, 21-point win.
You could see both Drake May and Spencer Rattler both going for like 2 bills and change, and like 2 or 3 touchdowns apiece, and having it be a dogfight, in which I fully expect to happen. I mean, one going for high 100 and some odd yards, another one going for some 200 yards. It's going to be a dogfight. It's just, Mike, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. Both of these defenses are unproven. So it's whichever one can go get more takeaways will win the game.
I had it next to me, Intern Joe. I want you to tell people about your show on Sunday, because I want to read the whole schedule, because there's a lot of GC Live shows this season.
Tons of it. Yeah. So super exciting news. Obviously, we talked about it last week, but I'm getting my own show, I guess you can say, here at Gamecock Central. I will be manning this Sunday slot for Gamecock Central. It's going to be super fun. New venture we're getting out into. It's called The Walkthrough. We finally have a name for it. And our good friend over at Gamecocks today is working on the artwork. Appreciate him doing that on such short notice. He's the best. Super excited to see what he can cook up. And then we'll have, I guess, episode 1 or a pilot soon. And then Sunday will be the official episode 1. I will be joined by Colin Taylor and Kendall Smith.
All right.
2 of my favorite people on the planet, next to Mike, of course. So I'm super excited about that. It'll be 30, 45-minute show, just kind of wrapping up, obviously, everything that you may have missed on Saturday, or that we may have missed in the post-game show on Saturday. Just kind of wrap it up, little preview of next week as well.
What time, Joe?
Yeah, so it's gonna be good. And then
What time's the show
so
airing?
what time is the show gonna come out? I'm shooting for 6 or 7 o'clock ish. Just kind of depends on what time I finish editing it. We'll see. Week one. After week one, we'll have a good idea of just how long it takes me to edit everything and get it down, as we are a one-man crew back here editing. But it's gonna be podcast form. So if you guys want to chime in or comment for next week, I'll be taking suggestions in the WordPress or on our website with the article, on the message boards, anywhere. Tweet at me, DM me, anything you have for my podcast, and I'll talk about a little bit more about that as we get closer to that. But super exciting stuff to walk through on Saturday. It'll be ready Monday morning for all your podcasts for your drive to work and all that stuff. So
the walkthrough, going to recap the game that was. And for those people that enjoyed listening to our shows, and I'm sure there's many people that listen to the show that Chris and Wes do in the afternoon for GC Live, you are going to be very happy with what I'm about to tell you if you haven't heard by now. There is going to be a GC Live show every single day during the course of the season, okay? On Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, GC Live with Chris and Wes will take place at 2 p.m. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays.
Yep.
Tuesdays, GC Live Talking Tuesdays. That's not changing. Intern
right
Joe,
here.
myself,
Yep.
7 o'clock every Tuesday, throughout the course of the season. Here's what's new. On Thursdays, we will be doing a GC Live at 2 that I'll be hosting. Some of that could change from a timing standpoint if we're trying to get a certain guest, but we are going to try to keep that time as consistent as possible because, again, following with Chris's show and Wes's show that they do, the majority of these shows are at 2. So, again, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, GC Live with Chris and Wes at 2. Tuesday nights, GC Live Talking Tuesdays with Intern Joe and myself at 7.
Mm-hmm.
On Thursday, GC Live with myself at 2. On Saturdays, before the game, it's being finalized, but I believe Wes and Kendall are going to be doing their pregame show before the Sandstorm. That is on Saturdays, okay? Post-game, Intern Joe, myself, and a former Gamecock. We had Michael Skarnecki and Perry Worth last year. We'll announce the guest coming up in the next couple days. That will return. We'll have the call-in number so you can call in immediately after the game. And then Sunday night,
have that up and running.
We needed another show. So God help us all. We have handed the keys over to Intern Joe. Intern Joe is growing up before our very own eyes. Intern Joe will have a show on Sunday nights. Now, there's other stuff going on in between. I'll also be putting out my Mixing a Water Monday segment with the former Gamecock. We'll also have other videos in there. That's not changing. But there is some type of live programming going on, or in this case, the walkthrough will be taped, but there'll be some type of programming going on every day with Gamecock Central. Every day. So, very exciting. Very exciting. And we're happy to have football back. We'll have football back. Lynn says, and we'll wrap things up real quick. Lynn says, I'm sorry if I missed it. Any updates on the Sandstorm Logger in Charlotte? Nothing yet, Lynn. To my knowledge, I know that those conversations, at least the last I was told, are still ongoing. There's things that I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know exactly how everything works when it comes to the distribution and how you're able to do it, how quickly you're able to get it. But it is something that I'm going to continue to push for them to be able to get up there. I don't know if it will happen in time for Saturday. I do know, and I think we've shared it before. I'll try to share it one more time before we sign off, before Intern Joe's computer dies on him. Let's see here. Try to share this real quick. Try to find this photo on my computer. So, where we can find the...
Oh, also shout out Nate Atkins for making the 52 or 53 man.
Yeah. How about that? Nate Atkins makes the 53-man roster. Jalen Brooks made the 53-man roster. There's some other players in there, but I just want to confirm before I go out there and just say, oh, yeah, that player made it. This one made it. Okay. Here it is.
Nate Atkins. So
here you go.
For him.
Here you go. This is where the Sandstorm Lager is being sold right now. As far as which stores are selling it, that's a different story. You might have to contact your local, grocery store or wherever you get your beer. to find out. But typically, wherever Steel Hands is sold, you'll be able to find it. But in these areas, okay, right now it's Columbia. This was posted on the 23rd. I don't know if Aiken, Myrtle Beach, Greenville, Rock Hill, and Spartanburg are selling them quite yet. I know it was coming soon. Some of those places, I'm assuming based on the conversations I've had with people, that it is being sold in some of those spots. I just don't know which ones. But I would assume by the end of the week that in all those areas, it'll be sold. So if you're trying to get some, my recommendation for the game, my recommendation would be pick it up in Columbia. If you're one of these areas, Greenville, Spartanburg, Rock Hill, Myrtle Beach, Aiken, reach out to that liquor store. I keep saying liquor store because back up north we don't have beer. Yeah, you have to go to an ABC store. You can't just go to the grocery store. But whether you go to a grocery store, whatever, reach out to them, find out if they sell it, grab it, and bring it up to Charlotte if that's what you're trying to do. Because again, unfortunately, I'm not 100% sure if anywhere in North Carolina, at least the Charlotte area, will be selling it. And I don't want to tell you, oh yeah, just go on up and on your way, hop off on this exit. So, okay. Lynn says she's in North Carolina, so might have to wait for Furman. I'm sorry, Lynn. I'm going to continue to push for you, though. I'm going to continue to push, and if I have an update, I will share that on Thursday when we do our afternoon show of GC Live. Appreciate everyone that tuned in tonight. I know there was a lot to talk about. Joe, any final thoughts that you have? Are you good to go, my man? I think Joe's computer's starting to die on him right now because he's moving in slow motion and we can't hear him. I think it's going to die. But he's Intern Joe. I'm Mike Yuba.
All good to go. Should be really looking forward to this weekend.
I'm going to mute Joe's
Obviously,
thing.
I think you guys are really good.
Yeah, Joe's computer just died on him. He hung in there as long as he could. Appreciate everyone that tuned in today. Real quick, housekeeping note. Tomorrow, on Wednesday, coordinators are going to be speaking. Clayton White, Dal Loggins. We're not sure if Pete Lembo will be speaking tomorrow. Last week, the special teams coordinator met with the media. In the past, Lembo has met every other week. I would love if Lembo's talking every week. But then again, I don't know how many schools across the country are having their special teams coach talk every week. But then again, there's not any coach out there from a special teams standpoint that a fan base would want to hear from each week more than Pete Lembo here in South Carolina. If you missed any of our show, head on over to the Gamecock Central YouTube page. If you're not a subscriber, just hit the little bell. Subscribe. It's free. Anytime one of these GC Live shows or any one of our videos come out, as well as updates and commitment breakdown videos, you'll be able to get a notification sent right to your phone, and you'll be able to watch that video. Or if you want to be able to watch on your phone any of these GC Live shows that are going to be coming out this week, you'll be able to get notified there. Or if you're a podcast listener, head on over to wherever you listen and download your podcast, and you'll be able to find us on Gamecock Central and be able to catch all of the shows as well as the episodes that drop on 107.5 The Game during the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. He's Intern Joe. I'm Mike Yuba. Appreciate everyone that tuned in tonight. If you're heading up to Charlotte, enjoy the game. If you see the Gamecock Central crew, don't be a stranger. Come on over, wave, say hello, and let's enjoy this game on Saturday as South Carolina looks to begin the year 1-0, trying to do what they did the last time in this very stadium, and that's being able to take care of the North Carolina Tar Heels. Everyone have yourself a great Tuesday and the rest of the week as we get ready for week 1 of college football in Charlotte.